G'day, freedom lovers. Back here again with another live chat. I'm getting really good at this stuff. I've been practicing all week. We've got a new guest here, some fellow I met in far north Queensland at the Apocalypso Festival that we just went on the weekend. I'd like to introduce to you from Awakening in Health, Mr. Dennis O'Connor. How are
Hey
you,
Ryan, how
mate?
you doing? Very good, Mark.
Yeah,
How you doing?
good. Very good, mate. Very good. So, for those who haven't come across your work before, tell us a little bit about what you do. And I think it was really interesting to find out, sort of the backstory of why you started doing what you're doing as well.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Listen, I'm kind of came from the belly of the beast, as it were. I'm a nurse by trade. I did 10 plus years on and off in intensive care, and so I became what's called a clinical nurse consultant. So I kind of got relatively high up the ladder where you teaching nurses and teaching doctors, and I got fairly burned out doing that. So I ended up leaving and did a few other things like scuba dive instructor and sold some real estate and. I ended up going back into health, but I veered towards more mental health and drug addiction type things. And while the reason I actually went back into nursing was because I was a real estate agent, so I had about four properties at the time, and that was around the time of the 2013 crash. And all of a sudden, when you're not making money, you can't afford to pay your mortgages. The house prices are crashing, and I was behind the curve with the property prices going down, and essentially I lost a lot of money and a lot of equity through having to sell off these houses to pay my debt. And a question I asked a lot after that was a really simple question: where the hell did my money go? Where did all that value go? And I kept on getting these really weird bloody descriptions or explanations of, listen, oh, property and money, oh, it's a kind of a future value. And the way I had it, the way it was kind of set up, I had about $1 million odd worth of equity, and the price dumped, and the let's say it went down, I don't know, 40% or so. Where did that 400 grand go? What
Hmm.
does it disappear? And nobody could answer me that effectively. And then I stumbled across a book by a fellow called G. Edward Griffin, The Creature from Jekyll Island. And bang, that was a big wake up call. And I never knew that the central banks were privately owned. They lend money to the governments, they lend money to us, and then they claw it all back. And essentially, that's what happened. Was the bank lent me money, they crashed the market, which they do periodically, and then they took my property. So essentially, that's a simplified way of how the system works. But
So
when you
they,
start,
they took,
yeah, sorry,
just hold you there for a second, they took your
yeah.
property, so you lost your house.
Well, I had to sell, yeah, and I had to sell at a loss. So, all that previous equity as the market's gone down,
Yeah.
I was looking really good for a while there, and then I kind of had to bail, and ended up with very little.
Yeah. Yeah, man, that's
Yeah,
gotta hurt, dude. And I certainly know how you feel about things and whatnot. And of course, I've got a phone call that I really wanted to answer, but he called at the wrong time, so he's going to have to wait. Um, yeah, so yeah, I mean, I'm definitely feeling a sting now as we sort of seem to be moving into a similar sort of an economic crisis. And, I might just sort of at this point, before we start getting into the more medical side of what you were doing, to say to our YouTube listeners and viewers that if you want to see more, you're going to have to jump over to one of our other platforms via the link tree. Just banner here. If you follow this, it should be in the descriptions as well, because there is going to be some content, I suspect, that YouTube's going to say we don't like. So goodbye, YouTube. Come and follow us over at one of our other channels. I recommend Rumble for you guys. So we will remove that one, and hopefully that worked, because I haven't done that before. That's a new addition to what was going on. So, all right, we're pretty free to speak now because we're away from the belly of the beast. So sorry, so where were you at that point? You've lost your house. You're obviously feeling pretty down, and I guess the nature of your work, you're going to be sort of having to implement some of your own strategies to yourself in this case, and I'd be curious to see how easy that is to do.
yeah. Well, it was fairly tough because I kind of, after I left nursing to begin with, I kind of made a vow that I'd never go back to nursing. But it so happens that it's well paid, and I could get into a fairly senior position. So I kind of felt fairly shitty about the fact that I, did something I promised I wouldn't do. But again, the universe has ways of throwing things in front of us that we kind of need. And even
Mm.
though when I was in intensive care, you kind of, when you move to different hospitals, you get exposure to different areas. So I wasn't a novice in mental health, but it was always an area that I didn't really, particularly want to have much to do with. But I kind of disliked the more clinical side of nursing even more, and I thought, "Oh, stuff it. Listen, I'll get back into nursing for a couple of years and get back on my feet." But I've kind of fell into the area of addiction and those kind of psychological areas, and now it's really that doing a lot of work in those areas really threw open a load of options in relation to how I saw the system working, and seeing both sides of that more physical kind of nursing, like intensive care, and the more psychological stuff. And I was a bit fortunate to be able to take some of those skills from the more physical stuff across. And I think I was telling you on the weekend, Mark, about I got into a thing called the acute care team, which is the very pointy end of mental health. That's where you're dealing with suicides, and you're going out with the police, and you're dealing with people who are violent, psychotic, all that kind of stuff. So it's very interesting.
Mm.
But when I went there,
I can imagine
um,
it'd be quite challenging as well.
yeah, yeah, absolutely, yeah, challenging. But the very interesting thing when I first, this is probably maybe, I don't know, 6, 7 years ago now, or maybe a bit longer, I can't quite remember. When I went across to mental health, um, it was blatantly obvious that there was no real focus on the physical side of stuff. And I kept on asking this
Mm.
question, and about, I think it was 3 or 4 times, I can't remember it exactly. I said to my so-called peers, because I was the new kid on the block, why
Mm.
aren't we looking at stomach, at gut health in relation to all these problems? And I got this question of why?
Can I
Why would
just?
we look at that? Yeah,
Oh
yeah.
yeah. Well, I'm curious why were you intrigued to look at that myself? Like,
I'll
it's not a
say,
field I
yeah,
understand. So.
absolutely. And the question I got from people who were very experienced in this area that I was kind of new to would asked exactly that question. Why would you look at gut health? And my answer was because of serotonin. 85 to 95% of serotonin is produced in your stomach. And the response
Oh
I got was, no, it's not. And I was
yeah. I
saying,
thought it was.
yes, it is. And I had three different people jump onto a chair and furiously open Google, slamming the keyboard keys and going, no, it's not, and then going, oh, oh, wow, I never knew that. And I'm kind of
Wow.
thinking at this early stage, holy shit, there's something fairly wrong with this system when I'm the new
Mm.
kid on the block and I'm telling my so-called peers that serotonin is produced in your stomach. And I'm getting, no, it's not. And it took even 3, 4 years later, and I'm sitting in these bloody rooms with these doctors, and these obese patients are coming in with Coca-Cola, dare ice cream, milk, all these shit. And I'm just thinking, because we had to sit in with some of these doctors, and I'm thinking, when is this doctor going to point out that they've got to cut this stuff out because it's causing it's worsening their depression, and not one bloody word about it. So I became fairly quickly disillusioned over the years I was working there.
Yeah. I can imagine. So where do we go from there? Like there you are, sort of challenging a narrative, and you've just like slapped these guys in the face with a cold dead fish.
Yeah,
Did they take this on board in any way,
no,
or
that's
so
the
even though
insanity of
they
it.
knew you've told them and they're still not taking it on board, they've
Yeah.
admitted, oh, I didn't know that, and they don't do anything.
Well, you see, the thing is, it's all about process and procedure. So that part wasn't in the process, which is a
Right.
huge failing in the system to begin with. But I spent about the last 3 years working in that job of ensuring that my clients wouldn't go near a doctor because I knew they'd get straight on antidepressants and they'd be a client for life.
Yeah. So when you say the antidepressants leads to a client for life, and I mean, does that mean that they're highly addictive, or that they're not really dealing with their issues and they're just sort of pocketing them or putting them in the back of their mind, and that pill's helping keep it there? Is that sort of the thought process there?
So not really. So I think again, it's like the it's like the areas that you kind of talk about the when you were working in the media. Once you
Mm.
start digging, it throws up all this stuff. And a fellow I stumbled across was a Professor Irving Kirsch, and he became this unwitting kind of hero of something called the placebo effect. But so what he used to study the placebo effect was antidepressants, because it was a psychological thing. And this is back in the mid 90s, I think. And some of his studies and his research were just quite mind blowing, and you never hear doctors talk about them. Okay, and this fella was pointing out that if you held off with antidepressants for something like 3 to 4 weeks, the outcome of recovery was exactly the same. Okay, and you might say, oh well, antidepressants, they kind of don't hurt anyway, so you may as well put them on. It doesn't matter much. But the doctors don't tell you, and I used to get into trouble for this, that when you start most antidepressants, it increases your suicidality within the first 1 to 2 weeks. It makes you suicidal. People kill themselves when they get started on antidepressants. Your doctors don't tell you that, because then patients might go, oh, hang on a second, yeah, I don't really feel like killing myself, so I won't take those.
So, I mean, somebody's in a depressed mode to begin with. Those kind of thoughts are sort of on the edge to begin with. And you're saying the antidepressants, which is fundamentally supposed to not make you depressed, is making you so depressed that you're contemplating suicide? Or is it more a case that it's triggering something in the mind that's really making you irrational?
I would say the latter, Mark, and there's no real kind of good dig into the mechanics of why it happens, but it's more the outcome.
Mm.
But the interesting thing is, even when it comes to this term of suicidality, there is a thing: you can be actively suicidal and you can have suicidal ideation, and I'll explain what that means.
Yep.
Usually, if somebody's coming to see the emergency services and they're screaming and crying and shouting suicidality, they are not necessarily suicidal. In fact, the majority of times they're actually not suicidal.
You're
They are.
screaming for
It's
help.
absolutely, it's a cry for help, and it's the ones that are actively suicidal. They're the ones invariably that you find unconscious. They end up in intensive care, or they end up swinging off a. You find them when it's too late. So a
Yeah.
great question I had to clarify that was when I was dealing with clients one on one in front of me. I'd ask them this question: okay, so you've lost your job, your wife has left you. You've had a bereavement in the family, you're out of money, you're losing your house. If I had a magic wand and I could wave that magic wand and reverse all of those things, would you still be suicidal? And about 9 times out of 10, I would get no. I would be okay. And what that defines is that it's a reasonable and a normal response to a crisis in your life. And once you kind of push away those kind of those ideas of those people wanting to escape their problems, they realize that it's a cry to escape their problems. They're not actually suicidal. That in itself can have a dramatic, immediate improvement in their outlook.
Mm. Okay. So obviously these things are not being very well received while you're practicing within, I guess, the mainstream health system. So where did that leave you?
Well, the funny thing was that there was a group of patients which were the hardcore patients, and I would keep on from my peers getting, "Hey, this is one for you, Dennis. This is one for you, Dennis." And the other interesting thing was the outcomes of the majority of my patients were a lot better, because I would be teaching them about gut health, I'd be teaching them about circadian rhythms, I'd be teaching them about blue light, and within weeks there'd be massive pickups in their moods. And the majority of mine I could close the files on, and that just didn't get any credit at all.
Wow. So when you say credit, can you define how you would normally get credit?
Well, you can't really. So I mean, all the stats and all the KPIs, as we call them, they kind of all get fed into these computers, and there's no real mechanism to say, "Hey, Dennis, what are you doing, and why is that working?" It's kind of this collective, shitty computer systems that there's no real mechanism for you to get rewarded for doing a good job. And quite the opposite. In fact, I was getting into trouble for not putting patients in front of doctors.
Wow. So when you say trouble, what kind of trouble are we looking at here?
Dennis, we need this patient to come in. Listen, this patient is doing really well, and they have said that they specifically don't want to see the doctor. Well, our policy says that they have to come in. I want you to call them. Well, I'd rather not do that. Well, you have to. Naughty boy. And
Right.
then I'm on the phone ringing these patients saying, "Hey, listen, remember I told you that they might insist that you come in regardless of you doing well? Yeah, well, it's happened. Yeah, so you do have to come in." And the tragedy was about sometimes, not often, but sometimes the doctors would talk them into getting ill again, oh, poor you, and then showing a script of antidepressants in front of them. And they'd reverse all
Wow.
this other good work.
So, what do you think the mechanism behind that is? Is there some sort of economic incentive for them?
Listen, it's unfortunately, and again, I do a bit of speaking about this sometimes, but it really hits all the criteria of cults, and the army to a certain extent is a cult, and one of the mechanisms that they use in that people use in cults, especially in a situation like the army, because that's about the best analogy, is this massive peer pressure in order to, you listen to your sergeant, the sergeant listens to the next one up, the next one up listens to the next one up. But the other big thing is sleep deprivation. And if you're a doctor, your head is looking down so much into books, you don't get a chance to look up and look around and look at other things. A few do, but not very many. So by the time you're kind of entrenched in that this is what we do situation, and those kind of mechanisms, there's not really much of a choice to see anything outside it. And the other big thing is something that happened in 1913, I think, was a thing called the Flexner Report. And the Flexner Report essentially very indirectly led to the pharmaceutical companies being responsible for all doctors' curriculums. Okay, so indirectly,
Right.
the end result is that doctors are trained by pharmaceutical companies, and they're the ones who want the drugs being sold. So unfortunately, the doctors by default follow their standards.
I mean, as a patient, I've kind of observed throughout the years that, well, if they can't throw a pill at the problem, they don't seem to be able to solve it. And now I understand why. Thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, and again, for me, it's about kind of keeping it fairly simple. And I'd like to say I'm oversimplifying it, but I'm not really. It is that simple.
Yeah. No, yeah, wow. So, obviously, your amazing work's not being appreciated because, Big Pharma's not getting the bucks that they're always chasing. So, where did that leave you?
Well, that left me with a disciplinary process, and when that happened, I just went, nah, stuff this, I'm out, and it was a really tough time. I was fairly miserable about it,
Mm,
but then I kind of got out before all this COVID stuff blew up about a year and a half before, and I kind of went through what a lot of people in the medical profession are going through now, especially the ones that refuse the vaccination. So I could really empathize with the shock that they were undergoing, but I'd done it just previously, just for other reasons. And I guess that's kind of why I started being more active in my kind of crusade to kind of help wake people up and to help people have a bit of success.
mm. Have you been able to sort of reach out to other people in the medical industry who have had, that shock and you were able to sort of help them due to your previous experience, perhaps?
Yeah, listen, my path has crossed with a few people, Mark, but not too many.
Mm,
I think a lot of them kind of just rode the wave with the idea to get back in and or to stay in it. But not
okay.
many have left. And again, that's a very good system because you're parented by this structure. It pays you very well. So you don't really want to rock the boat. So you're kind of trapped by
Mm,
by the dollar, unfortunately.
yeah, a dependency.
That's right.
Yeah, you could almost liken it to an addiction of sorts, but I mean, life is a bit addictive. So I guess
Yeah.
being able to sustain that life is yeah, a
And,
big draw card for a lot of people. And you're not the first person to sort of mention that. Like I've had interviews with teachers who have said the same thing. Like it was the economic incentive that even drove the private schools. Like it was really fascinating to find that a private school was actually getting so much money from the government that they weren't going to resist a government mandate when they're supposed to be, private and operating independently, because the amount of money they get was, too great to lose.
Absolutely, and even the Steiner schools got hooked in. There's a Steiner
Mm,
school up the road here, and they're meant to be very awake and onto it. And they were telling families that their children couldn't attend unless they were vaccinated. So and the same with the
wow.
teachers. So that just blew me out the water when I heard that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's one
Because
thing to
Steiner specifically was against vaccines. Interestingly, in about 1940, 1945, Steiner wrote that vaccines, the reason vaccines were there was to sever our connection with spirituality.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
I've heard a bit about these Steiner schools. I might have to do a little bit of digging into those a bit later, but it's interesting that they've gone from one and saying that it's severing it. Yeah, wow, that's just mind blowing. I had no
I'm down
idea.
all sorts
And
of
they
rabbit holes,
even,
Mark.
yeah, yeah. No, I think we were all going down rabbit holes, but you're only one person. There's only so many you can go down at one time, eh? But yeah, like I've heard of Steiner Schools. I just haven't looked into it a great deal. It hasn't been top of my priority list, I guess. So, but anyway, so where are you now? What are you doing now that you've left?
So basically now I've got my clinic called Awakening in Health, and I had a physical clinic just a little while ago, but all these restrictions in Australia are just I just don't want to comply. I just don't really want to do it. So, and I'm also about a third of the way through a book about a kind of an A to Z of health based on the programs that I used to run people through that used to
Hmm.
get them better. So I'm kind of thinking I'll probably going to maybe leave Australia for 3 6 months, sit on the beach and finish off writing this book and then float it.
Yeah, nice. I guess it'd be good to just get out there and sit on the beach and not have to worry about things for a little while, clear the mind. And I'd be interested to see what you come out with in this book, my friend.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So when do you think you might be doing that?
I've got a kind of a tentative plan to maybe around mid-November. So just maybe travel down the coast, catch up with a few people, and then head from Melbourne to somewhere sunny and someplace that's a little bit cheaper to live than Australia.
Yeah, don't stay in Melbourne too long. I recommend, maybe December, January. Outside of that's too cold.
That's what I'm thinking.
Your blood's all used to this nice warm climate. I left that place for a reason. It's too bloody cold, eh? Too
Absolutely,
cold.
I'm hearing you. Yeah.
Yeah. No, so, and I see you've got a bit of a radio show sort of going on there. Tell me a little bit about that, mate.
Yeah, that's right. I'm under that same banner, Awakening in Health, and again, I think everything kind of overlaps. So the stress of COVID, the financial crisis, rising interest rates, bloody what else do they throw on us? War here, impending doom. We're just getting slammed from every direction with fear, and fear relates to your health because essentially once you're
Yeah.
in a soft fear response, you're either in an adrenaline state or a cortisol state. And
Mm.
again, the kind of stuff I teach about, there's nothing wrong with cortisol. Anything your body produces is good. But
Yeah.
what we want to, there's so many, absolutely terrible fallacies. I mean, cholesterol is the other one. There's no such thing as bad cholesterol. Your brain is made of cholesterol. 85% of, or roughly, depending on what you read, of all the solid matter in your brain is cholesterol. So when doctors are lowering your cholesterol, they are lowering a really important mechanism that your body needs. You never lower cholesterol. You look at the cause of why your cholesterol is high, and you address that cause. It's the same with
Yeah.
cortisol. Your cortisol is high because you're in a stressed state. So you look at the stress and you do something about the stress, not about the cortisol. So I think current events very much relate to illness. So to, I guess, demystify and to tackle a lot of the rubbish that we're getting told, I kind of felt that to have a platform on radio was a good vehicle to do that. And there's a local radio station up here in Cairns, which I kind of put my hand up and said, I actually met one of the girls at a rally who was already in the radio station, and she said, "Would you like a slot?" And I went, "Yeah, listen, why not? It's a vehicle to I guess, try and do what you're doing, which is to kind of help spread a bit of truth." And I'd already been doing the YouTube thing and the BitChute thing for a couple of years anyway, so I kind of was relatively comfortable, having my voice across the airwaves.
So if people are, the radio station, I'm guessing, is sort of more Cairns based. Can we get onto it, say, outside of Cairns as well? Or?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's got a live stream function on the website. It's Cairns FM 89.1. But what I do with my show is I edit it and I pop it on my BitChute Awakening in Health and YouTube, and I'm actually going to Rumble as well. So if anybody kind of wants to listen back to what I've been doing, feel free. I've had a few interesting guests on. I've had Dr. William Bay. I've just recently completed a couple of talks with Dr. Karen Ben, who's down in Mission Beach, and she's got some cracking stuff to say about climate change. All of it, of course, controversial and stuff that you'll never hear in the mainstream media.
Yep, I definitely found the same sort of things communicating with Deborah from the Frog Hospital. She's another person who's very environmentalist, but sort of seeing the truth of what's going on. It's going, this is what they're saying doesn't add up.
Yeah.
So and now we see this wind farm thing. It seems to have fractured the environmental movement. Because you can see people are like, what? We're bulldozing rainforests to put up these eyesores? What?
Absolutely.
It's coming back from Apocalypso, going through Mariba area, you look out into the horizon. What would have been a lovely landscape is now decimated by these hideous looking things that produce virtually no power. And I don't. It's madness, and to have found out that it's an unregulated industry as well. So it's just they just running wild, putting these things wherever they want.
It's funny, isn't it? Because before you, I guess, again, go down those rabbit holes, we're scratching our heads, and we've always got this question: why is it looking like this? Why is this going on? But once you work out that that it's driven by these massive corporate entities, which essentially are kind of, I guess, run by the central banks in the long term. But these entities are just not out for our good. They're not out for our health. I think they thrive on destruction and devastation. So these dirty bloody wind farms that are killing birds, and you're ripping out tons and tons of minerals from the earth, and it's destroying all sorts of environments.
Mm.
I think they actually thrive in it and like it.
Yeah, it seems to be the only logical answer. But again, like I was saying about the mainstream media, and I guess you could sort of see the same in the medical profession. It's the people that are going along with it aren't necessarily evil. They just don't seem to know any better. Or, in a lot of cases, they actually believe the bullshit themselves. They actually believe that what they're doing is the right thing because, well, how could, these industries and whatnot be lying to us? Surely somebody would catch them out. We have these laws and legal proceedings in place, and, people just have this sort of blind faith in a lot of cases. But like you say, the evidence is right in front of you. It's amazing how easy it is for people to not challenge that which they can see with their own eyes or hear
Is
with
it?
their
And
own
that's
ears.
that's that's the great scam, isn't it?
Mm.
That we've been conditioned not to believe our own eyes. And
Yeah.
I had a chat with Zeb Freeman just before, and one of the things I said to him, it's almost like now I can't make a comment about, hey, it's sunny outside or it's raining outside, unless, and somebody might turn around and say, well, how do you know? Are you a climate expert?
Yeah.
It's gotten to a state of absurdity, hasn't it?
Yeah, oh, it is. There's no other way to describe it, and even from that media point of view, that they'll give you a presentation. Well, so and so says it's raining, and so says it's sunny, and that's the end of the report. Like, you didn't think to point the camera outside to check?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
it's pretty
that's right.
easy.
And again, and even that's another point, which is relevant. It's just that binary choice. If
Mm,
it's this, it's not this, and that's the
mm,
only option you have. So like things like
mm.
good Ukraine, bad Russia, good Israel,
Yep.
bad Palestine. There's so many more nuances. Again,
Mm.
is it hot or it's cold? No, it might be in the middle. It might be raining. It might be humid. There's a thousand other things as opposed to just this binary choice. So
Yeah.
they've really kind of done a great job indoctrinating us from a very early age all the way through.
Yeah, definitely. And, I remember thinking, particularly in regards to climate change, there's some of the things they'd say to us in primary school and think, we're all going to die.
Yeah.
And that's like, what a horrible thing to be putting into kids' heads, Like,
Again,
you
fear.
go to
Fear makes
school
you sick.
happy and, yeah, yeah.
Fear
And
makes you
it's
sick. So,
clearly effective is particularly in the newer generation where I think they've really rammed it up, a lot more than they had in the previous. You see these people are like rabid with, their attitude towards these things, and I guess they're so afraid that they
yeah.
feel the need to act in such a, violent and confronting manner.
And what I find quite interesting is how all these systems complement each other. So from that early age, these children are being trained to be afraid, and that fear does cause stress, and stress has a knock-on
Mm,
effect to give you other sorts of medical problems. So then
yeah.
notwithstanding bloody vaccines that they shove into these poor little people. But you're perpetuating then the medical industry, and then the medical industry is perpetuating the banking industry, and there's all these parts of this puzzle just to keep us trapped in this massive cage. And again,
Yeah.
that's why I like to go down the kind of common law route, and try to explore that, and really push that people have many more choices, including about their health.
Mm. Here's one that I find a lot of people don't really seem to know about, or don't talk about for whatever reason. Codex Alimentarius. Are you aware?
I know just no, essentially no.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is kind of like right in going back. What's the year now? Yes, over 13 years ago now. So there was a lot of hoo ha going on in YouTube and whatnot, and so various more conspiracy minded people. These people who are thinking, where they were going, hang on, the UN's been planning for 10 years to get this Food and Drug Administration sort of thing under their control. So at the time, we had an Australian Food and Drug Administration of some sorts. I can't remember the exact words, but something to that effect. And people were writing in saying, "Hang on, what's going on with this Codex Alimentarius thing? We are concerned." And a few friends have brought this to my attention, and I'm like, "Okay, well, I'll go have a look." And I check the government webpage, and the government webpage says there's nothing to worry about Codex Alimentarius, nothing to see here. Australia still controls its Food and Drug Administration. I'm like, okay, but I've been told that January 1st, 2010, it's supposed to happen. I'm like, okay, cool. So January 1st rolls around, big hoo ha. We've done the piss up and the Happy New Year, running around hugging everyone and doing a thing. And me being me thought, I wonder. So I go over to the same website that it said you had nothing to worry about, 3 a.m. And I check the website, and it's now Codex Alimentarius Australia, ABN number, street address, mailing address, the whole thing. So the whole time they're telling you had nothing to worry about, they had just flicked the switch 2010, like while everybody's partying. It was like a Gough Whitlam move. I'm like, wow. And that really, okay, they're doing this. Like, it was one thing to know that they're plotting and planning and thinking about these things, but to actually see it implemented in such a fashion, I'm like, whoa, now I've got to be aware. I mean, I was always kind of on the fringes of what's right and wrong, and can I trust the government and all those sorts of things. It's just the way I've always sort of thought. But that was a big slap in the face with the cold fish of whoa. So from that time on, I started checking the packets of everything, and I'm just watching. And over a period of months, so many products of, foods that I would normally have eaten suddenly started having a lot more preservatives, flavor enhancers. I mean, flavor enhancers always been around, but more of these kinds of things were coming in where previously they weren't. So, like one of my favorite, I used to love the old pub squash. That's like an Aussie staple, the old pub
Yeah.
squash on a hot day, and my first realization was the taste had changed. I'm like, what's this? What's going on? Look at, they've put that artificial garbage in it. I think it's 211. So that is it? It's a preservative, I think it is. Preservative 211, and it's now pretty much in most soft drinks. I think like Coca-Cola, Schweppes lemonade if you buy the bottle, so the formerly 1.25, which I think is now like 1.1. If you buy it in the bottle, it hasn't got it in it, but if you buy it in the can, it does. The large majority of pre-mixed alcoholic beverages have them in them, particularly those of the American variety. I used to drink Jim Beam and Jack Daniels. I just don't went off the pre-mixed cans as a result because it was making me feel sick. I don't know if it was the knowledge of it, or if, whatever. But yeah, I steer clear of that stuff right away now. And yeah, and it just ramped up further and further again. So
And that's very relevant because again, you can really work out whether you got a good clinician or a doctor, a psychologist, or a psychiatrist. And I would say 99 out of 100 psychologists and psychiatrists are bullshit. So be very careful if you sit in front of one of them. But if the conversation about your stomach is not being mentioned within the first 5-10 minutes, walk in the other direction. And even kind of just little things. I mean, I had a friend of mine up here. He's also in our kind of truth scene, really nice guy. Showed me a picture of his dog, 2 weeks to live with cancer. This is in November last year, and the dog was given palliative care medications to kind of end its life. And when I saw the dog, I told Andy what he should do. The dog is still alive, and it was
oh
a
wow,
13-year-old dog. And the dog, and not only is the dog still alive, but Andy reckons that he's acting the way he was when he was 8 years old, even though he's a 13-year-old dog. He still has tumors kind of hanging off him, but this is nearly a year later, and the vet
yeah,
gave this dog 2 weeks to live. So we just have option after option after option. And so many of those things that I used to have a quick look at when I was in the system, and you'd read your Google headline about it. This is rubbish. This has been debunked. This has been taken off the market for X. That's been taken off the market for Y. Many of those things that I dismissed back then, now I'm finding out that there was legitimacy in just about all of them. All of those things that are debunked because of X, Y, and Z. They're all legit.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? I
Mm.
mean, and coming back to that dog thing, I remember, we used to get the can of Pal or whatever it was for the dog, and then all of a sudden one day the dog starts leaving cow pats in the backyard. It's like, what?
Yep.
You know, and like, it was always the thing, you pour that sloppy, horrible looking thing out there and you think, geez, I wouldn't eat that. And the dog looks down and goes, yeah, neither would I.
Well, the funny
You want
thing,
me to eat that? Like,
I grew up in Ireland, and my grandparents both sides had farms, and they had like medium-sized dogs and small dogs, and you wouldn't bat an eyelid if there was an 18-year-old dog. That
mm,
was normal for a small dog, and if the dog was about 22, 23, then you'd go, wow, that's an old dog. And
yeah,
your medium-sized dogs, the absolute minimum would have been 12, 14, and they would get to about that 17, and then they'd be an old for a middle-aged dog. And at some point, it's all changed. If you got an
mm,
Alsatian or if you got a larger dog, you're told that the dog it's an old dog at 10. That's rubbish.
yeah,
You told that a terrier, a small dog, you told it's old at if you're lucky 14. Absolute
yeah,
bullshit. And hopefully there's people who are listening here if they've got pets. But if you're feeding your dog dried food or that shit in the tins, you are hastening its life. The dog's
yeah.
going to be dying quicker.
We certainly realised, obviously, just, we don't want to be digging out half the lawn to get these bloody cow pats out. The
Yeah.
dog's turd shouldn't be looking like that. So we threw that away, and,
Well done.
obviously the old table scraps of, steak and bones and all that sort of stuff.
Perfect.
And we buy the big bone, and you never see a dog look so happy, and you go bury
Yeah.
it and, dig it up 3 months later, and you knew all about it as the smell wafted through the house. But,
Yeah.
she lived, I think we got about 14 years out of that. That was a Great Dane Bull Mastiff Rhodesian
That's
Ridgeback.
good for everything. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, so, yeah, big, just a little dog.
yeah, yeah. But again, they're
So,
doing the same. They're doing the same to people. Again,
mm,
in relation to any kind of health condition, arthritis, asthma. I used to have chronic asthma. I thought I was going
yep,
to get knee replacements. What else? I had chronic hay fever. And
yep,
again, you go to a specialist, they did absolutely nothing. Now I
hmm
don't have those conditions.
yep, same. I used to
Yeah,
do the asthma thing as well, and
yeah,
just eating better, and amazingly enough, smoking actually solved that problem. Go figure. I don't know why, but it worked. But yeah, I haven't had to touch that in donkey's years now.
yeah.
So yeah, it is. I found just about eating better, but for some people who do have a few gut issues, perhaps what would you recommend off the cuff that they could possibly do without obviously having a chat to diagnose specific dietary needs?
Well, you got to be very careful with that diagnosis. And this is another thing I speak about, well, especially when I do some public speaking and whatnot. But there's something I really enjoy telling people about, and there's more examples, but I'll give you two in particular from in around 1980 and 1990, mid 80s, I think. But both were of people diagnosed with liver cancer in two different countries. This is in mainstream medical literature.
Hmm.
And in both, so let's say they were given 6 months to live, they died within days of that diagnosis, okay, with liver cancer. On autopsy, there was no liver cancer in either of those two people.
What?
There was
So
yep.
how did they get the diagnosis then?
So they had symptoms of what looked like liver cancer. I'm guessing there might not have been a biopsy at the time, so they were obviously had some kind of renal or hepatic failure. You can do blood work and whatnot, but yeah, when they were opened up, no liver cancer.
Wow. So
And
do you think it was just the shock of being told you're going to die? They believed it and shut down?
very close, very close. So there's a thing we about the placebo effect, obviously,
Yes.
and the placebo effect we should have that on a pedestal. That should be where
Mm.
we are going with when we're caring for people to activate healing. But we have the opposite of that, and it's called the nocebo effect. And nocebo is Latin for I will harm. Okay, so
Right.
another term that I call for the nocebo effect is medical hexing. And over the years, I would see doctors and they would say, okay, this person has X amount of years to live or X amount of months. And when the patients hear that, they manifest this. So it's really dangerous to be given a diagnosis because there's a 30% chance if you don't have it, you'll manifest it. So that's the
Yeah.
first thing. Okay. The next thing is that the foundations, they're virtually all the same. And there's always exceptions down the line, but the very first thing that you got to do is you got to get rid of the toxicity, and invariably the toxicity is coming through your food and your water. And then the other thing is, especially if you eat processed foods, is micronutrient deficiency, and things like your salts are stripping loads of good things from your body that you need to repair and rebuild. And that's not to say that salt is bad. Salt is not bad. It's the type of salt that's bad. So this bleach stuff that you get in the white containers, you're killing yourself when you're putting it in your system. Whereas if you have something like Celtic sea salt, you're actually replenishing. And really, you can't poison yourself with a really good salt.
What about, say, the pink Himalayan rock salt? How's that rate?
Yeah, listen, my jury's out, but it's got to be stacks and stacks better than that shit that they have in the table salt, the
Yeah.
Saxa. Some people say it's probably not mined the best. It might have some radioactivity about it, but listen, again, it's all about increments. If you got that white stuff in your kitchen and you go to the pink Himalayan salt, you're doing way better than you were previously.
Yeah, cool. Well, I'm glad I'm doing better than I was previously with the pink Himalayan salt. I was hoping you weren't going to tell me something bad about it because I'm thinking I was doing the right thing. So, but I've seen the price of that Celtic rock salt, and that's, ooh,
Yeah,
that'd want to be some bloody good salt for the price they're asking for it. And apparently, it's really hard to get a hold of too at the moment.
it's
There's been a
get
big,
absolutely it is. Yeah,
yeah.
but there's
So
other options
obviously,
like the Sorry, Mark. Yeah, there's other
no,
options as well. Like there's any good sea salt that's not processed. That's just the way nature intended it. There's a few New Zealand companies and what that do salts like that. But yeah, get good salt into your system.
any brands you would recommend off the top of your head?
I bought one recently at home, but I have no idea what brand it was. But it's a natural New Zealand salt. That's all I remember about it.
Oh, maybe you can drop it in the comments later when you get home.
Yeah, yeah, good call.
Yeah, yeah, cool, man. Wow. I'm not sure how we're doing for time. Oh yeah, we're
Yeah,
doing 42 minutes. That's not a bad run.
yeah.
So again, maybe just remind everybody how they can get a hold of you and listen into what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So it's Dennis with two N's at awakeninginhealth.com, spelt the way it sounds, Awakening in Health. And yeah, I run kind of courses and I've got a few programs, health programs, and I do one-on-one kind of stuff and consulting and whatnot as well. I'm on YouTube, Awakening in Health again. Actually, I've changed my brand to a friend of mine. We're collaborating. It's I think I changed it to Rise in Health, but if you search Awakening in Health on YouTube, you'll stumble across it. And I'm also on BitChute, heavily banned in on shadow banned on YouTube, as you'd expect. But yeah, I'm on Twitter as well. But yeah, just send me an email, or I'll drop you some links for the video as well, Mark.
Yeah, no, that'd be good, mate. We'll add
Yeah,
that into the description so people can find your stuff. That'd be
awesome.
great. So I don't know, anything you want to throw at me while you got me?
Yeah, listen. What I was thinking that we'll do is we after the live we can branch into a recording for my radio show, and we can tell the world about you, or you can even add it on as a tack on onto this, whatever, however you want to go with it.
Yeah, sounds like a plan, man. So I guess we'll I don't know. Is there anybody alive at the moment that would like to drop a comment in? Maybe we can throw it at the audience. See if
Yeah.
we get anything. There are a couple of people watching on Rumble. There, I can see your live chat there. If you want to drop, if anyone who's watching wants to throw a question. What are we getting here on the old fail book? I like to call it fail book because to me it's failed the human race by the way
Totally
it
right.
filters everything. But we got one person shared it. It's not, I'll get better at this stuff one day. I'll be able to figure out how many people are watching. But
You're multitasking better than I think than I could do. So well done.
oh wow! I only just learned how to do this last week, so it took several attempts with the kids and whatnot before I could figure it out. But I got there in the end, and I'm pretty happy with the way this interface works. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
I'd recommend it to you, man. It's actually a pretty good program. Like, I mean, like I can do things like, well, check out our link tree here, make it pop up and whatnot, and that's
What are you
obviously
using?
got all the links. This is StreamYard, so the
Gotcha.
Yeah, so I find it's a pretty good bit of software here, and we can click the next one that I've pre-prepared here and help fund our next Indigenous documentary. For those who have seen the Indigenous Voice to Parliament video, it's been quite successful, but we have so much more to share, and we can also do things like this. Check it out, the Proton. Drop me a line if you want to jump on, if you got some cool stories you want to share or something interesting that the community needs to know about, because that's what we're all about. Of course, we've got a Patreon that we're developing where we're going to have all these sorts of behind the scenes things, full unedited video interviews and all that sort of stuff. So there's so much to go through, and of course I am starving. I've got 4 kids to feed, so if you want to drop us a couple of bucks on PayPal, that'd be awesome. So as you can see, it's a pretty cool interface. We can do really cool stuff, and just another, obviously you've seen the countdown thing, but even midstream, I can, drop in a. So that's my little business side of things, where I do special effects, title animations, and all that sort of thing. So that it's just a click of a button, man. I highly recommend this to just about any podcaster. I'm astounded it's taken me this long to find it. So hopefully StreamYard will give me a plug. I think there was something here I can do. I did notice it earlier, and I think I've forgotten how to do it. Now I have to find it again, where I can possibly put in a link to recommend it to people, and when they use that link, I get like a couple of bucks off or something. So when I find it, I'll dig it out and I'll send you a copy.
We need
Yeah.
to do what we
So
can, because it's when you branching away from the normal system, you don't have as many options to generate abundance.
yeah, that's it. And I mean, we're all doing our best to sort of create a new world that I think everybody wants to see. We're all had enough of the old systems; they're not working for us. So
Yeah.
it's up to the people now. They have to decide. Do you want to turn off that TV and come and turn this one on? And all you have to do is just a couple of bucks. If everybody chucked in a couple of bucks once a month or something to that effect, or even join that Patreon. So like $10 a month, to get all this extra bonus content. That's the kind of new world that we're moving towards. So, by all means, help us
It's
all out.
and it's showing
Jump
that
in.
we can do that. We don't have to be
Mm,
slaves to the system. We don't have to be bribed by the better conditions. And I think if more of us started moving away, that it would,
mm.
we just have to stop complying, don't we?
Yeah. Well, they're not better conditions. That's the thing. Like, I
That's
mean,
right.
having seen behind the scenes of the mainstream media, it's just, whoa. I can't believe this stuff's being held together by sticky tape. Like
Yeah.
it's mad. I mean, what we're doing and the gear that we're using is, well, I know particularly here in this little area, what I have here is 10 times better than what I was using in the mainstream.
Wow.
And trying to edit a video on this tiny little laptop, I've got two 40-inch TVs here. I mean,
I hope you,
this is how you edit. Like,
I hope you got your blue light blocking glasses for those screens, Mark.
yeah, I should probably get some actually.
I'll be picking your health stuff apart if you're not careful.
It's probably not a bad idea. I might have to, have a bit of a chat with you off camera here about
Yeah,
a
pleasure.
few
Not
bits
at
and
all.
pieces you might be able to help me out with.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
but anyway, I think we might leave it there. One more time for everybody who's still listening. How do we find you, mate?
Yeah, Dennis at awakeninginhealth.com. Do a crunch on Awakening in Health, and yeah, you'll find me on Instagram, YouTube, BitChute, Rumble, and Twitter. And
Awesome,
follow. Give me
mate.
a like. Let me know. Let me know I'm loved out there, will you?
By all means, support this great man. He's met you just like a few days ago, and we're having this great conversation, and we're helping each other out as best we can, and that's the kind of new world that we want to see, not the new world order thingy that they're pitching. This is the proper new world. Good people helping each other out, man. So thank you very much for coming on and helping us out here, mate. And yeah, I guess let's move on to our second part. Thank you all for watching.
Good stuff. Absolute pleasure, mate.